Explain like I'm 5. Why was a dollar more valuable 60 years ago? Inflation is the simple answer. But what causes this? Why couldn't society just keep on keeping on with prices? Examples: a 25-cent for a candy bar, 75 for a fast food burger, $30 for a home, etc. It worked then, so why not now? Why not just agree to lower the prices of everything? You really want to buy a new bedroom set. Today, it's $1,000. What would you do if you thought the price was going to be $900 in a week or two? What would you do if you thought the price was going to be $1,100 in a week or two? The first scenario leads to a lot of people hoarding and not spending their money. If people don't spend money, then companies don't make money. If companies don't make money, they are forced to lay off workers and or go out of business. This leads to even more people not spending money, and the negative feedback loop continues. In the second scenario, you're going to spend your money now while it's worth more. More money spent means companies making more money, leads to hiring more workers, and or reinvesting the extra income back into growing their company. This is why a small amount of inflation is a good thing to have. The US targets to have an inflation rate of about 2.0%. I am 36 and literally have never thought of it that way. Excellent explanation, thank you. Similar, I'm 39 and never realized that inflation is to incentivize consumers to spend sooner rather than later, thereby helping the economy and not hoarding. But then it begs the question, why do billionaires hoard? Wouldn't putting that money back into the economy make everything better? And now we come to selfishness versus economics. Edit, till billionaires don't hoard like smog. Thanks. Billionaires don't really hoard. Bezos doesn't have some vault with $1 billion in cash. He simply owns things that have value in the billions, that being Amazon. He has a very large income, but nothing close to $1 billion. That's why when Elon bought Twitter, he sold a ton of his Tesla stock to fund it. If there are only $100 that exist, $1 is pretty valuable. If there are only $1,000 that exist, $1 doesn't mean shit. 60 years ago, there were a lot fewer dollars that existed compared to today. That's pretty much it. Edit, addendum. It's not about the amount in circulation. That is largely irrelevant, so long as it can effectively be moved in transactions. The rate of change, if the total is a much bigger factor. I think the ideal rate of change is 0, but most economists think a 2% increase a year is better. The total amount of economic activity taking place increases over time, and therefore the total number of dollars needed to express it must also grow. Let's say there are 10 people in a village doing different tasks, and a day's work pays $1. You need to have $10 change hands daily to express that. If the village grows to 20 people, but the currency supply doesn't keep up, then the daily pay must fall to 50 set. Incidentally, this is part of why the gold standard or Bitcoin can't work. Additionally, some inflation is generally useful for encouraging consumption and investment. If a dollar holds its value, or worse yet increases, then the optimal strategy may be to bury it. This reduces demand, which reduces economic activity. The value associated with that capital is frozen. You want the dollars to circulate, either by being used to purchase goods by the holder, or by being loaned out by the holder to someone else who needs goods. That keeps them moving. The holder performed some activity to earn the dollar, and now the dollar is being paid to someone else to provide some other goods or services. You don't want hyperinflation, but you want some. Lastly, it's nice for the government to be able to spend without taxing by printing from time to time. Nobody likes taxes, but nobody notices when the monetary supply goes up a little. Helps smooth things over. Explain like I'm 5. How come all barbershops have to have a sign that says chair and booth rentals are illegal? I can't seem to think of a reason why this sign is required by all barbershops. Like, do people really want to rent a barbershop booth? Most states allow this. Do you live in NJ? It got banned there outright. I think the rationale was that it would have been abused by shop owners to force employees to pay them high rental fees and effectively pay less than minimum wage to barbers. In other states, barbers and hairdressers often pay shop owners to run an independent business inside their shop. So you directly pay a hairdresser who brings their own equipment and sets their own rates but works inside their office, a barbershop. Interesting. Didn't realize it was only a NJ thing. Between this and gas pumping, I'm wondering what other unusual rules NJ has. Residents must tell everyone how great the pizza is in NJ even after they leave. What? I've never seen such a thing. What country do you live in? Most barbers operate as independent contractors. They show up to the barbershop, cut hair all day, and keep all of the money they get from haircuts and tips. At the end of the day, they pay rent to the barbershop for using the booth. The alternative is that you are employed to work for the barbershop and get paid an hourly wage. I have never heard of booth rentals being outlawed. Explain like I'm 5. Why did we need the blue LED before using them for general lighting? As far as I understand, you need to be able to mix red, green, and blue light to get white light and replace light bulbs. But the earliest example I can find of white LEDs used a blue LED and a yellow, apparently the result of mixing red and green light, phosphor coating to scatter the light across the visible spectrum. Why couldn't something similar be done with a red LED and a cyan, mixing blue and green coating cover to produce white light instead? Blue is special because it is the highest frequency of visible light and has the most energy per photon. You can remove energy by absorbing and re-radiating, but you can't add energy the same way. Hence, you can use phosphors to turn blue into other colors, but you can't use the same method to go uphill and turn other visible colors into blue. To expand on this, using the phosphors approach allows for a true full visible spectrum white, while the light emitted directly from the diode is necessarily a single frequency. You might think that you can get white by just mixing red, green, and blue, but there's a difference. To human eyes, that mixture looks white because it excites the 3 types of cones evenly. However, the spectrum that such lighting reflects off colored objects is not the same. Technology Connections has a video that illustrates this nicely. Due to the way LEDs actually create light, longer wavelengths of light, like red and green, are much easier to create. That's why red LEDs were invented first, followed by green. Blue and violet were impossible until researchers made a breakthrough in how to actually build the structure of the LED on a microscopic level. Even then, blue LEDs were a whole lot dimmer for quite a while than the red and green ones we're used to. Commercially viable blue LEDs weren't available until the late 1980s or early 1990s. For a much more in-depth, yet still mostly approachable explanation, check out this video from Veritasium. Edit. Interestingly enough, many commercial white LEDs are actually blue LEDs with a yellow phosphor coating on them. Even then, blue LEDs were a whole lot dimmer for quite a while than the red and green ones we're used to. Kind of ironic, then, that so many electronic devices today have one or more screaming bright blue LEDs on them. It's like they're making up for lost time or something. Explain like I'm 5. If everyone is experiencing staffing shortages at their jobs, but unemployment is at record lows, where is everyone working? That's not a contradiction. Both of those facts, if true, support one another. Unemployment is at a record low. Therefore, most people who want a job have one. Everyone is experiencing staffing shortages. Employers are having trouble finding new employees because most people who want a job are already employed. Where is everyone working? At places experiencing staffing shortages. As somebody who's been on the other side, unemployed and looking for a job during times like these, it's also businesses saying they have a shortage but aren't actually hiring either. Having friends and family tell me to go apply to X, Y, and Z business since they saw they had a shortage, only for them not to actually be hiring. In this right now, everyone I talk to is like, companies are begging for people to work, especially if you're willing to come into the office and not complain about wanting to be remote. Why can't you find a job? Then I send out another 50 job applications and get 0 response. It's miserable. A weird upskilling thing happened where lots of people learned enough to get entry-level skilled jobs who were previously doing unskilled work. Meanwhile, a lot of highly skilled people in more important positions are taking stock of their lives and working less. So now you've simultaneously got places looking for cheap labor struggling to find cheap labor, and other places desperately trying to retain hires until they're actually useful, because all of the smart people got the memo that they don't matter as much as they thought they did. Explain like I'm 5. Why are triangles the strongest shape, e.g. truss bridges? In layman's terms, please, no geometry engineering jargon. It's not that they're the strongest shape. There is a very specific thing that they're good at. A triangle cannot change shape without changing the length of its sides. This is uniquely true. Imagine a square. If you pulled on the corner, then the square would stretch into a parallelogram as the corners bend, even if the sides don't change length. Triangles can't be stretched like that. Because of this, if you pull on the corner of a triangle, you will not create any bending force in the sides, only squishing and stretching. Let's pause that for a moment. If I handed you a stick and asked you to break it, how would you go about it? You would bend it, right? You can't pull a stick apart or crush it with your bare hands, but you can bend it pretty easily. It's way easier to bend a material than to stretch or squish it. So triangles allow us to turn a force at their corner into just squishing and stretching, which is easier for materials to deal with. If the force is not at the corner, then all bets are off. Are some other shapes good at other things? Sure, circles are great for things that need to roll, and it's an easily extruded shape for materials. Hexagons, the bestagons, are excellent for maximizing strength and minimizing material used. Arches, specifically catenary arches, need a mention in this list. We do have to go a little bit into geometry for this, but I promise it's not big. While you were studying geometry in school, you may have heard of the SSS postulate. If you have two triangles and their sides have the same lengths, then they are the exact same shape. This right here is pretty much it. If something has more than 3 sides, I can change the angles around to make more shapes. For example, I could turn a rectangle into a parallelogram, or flip some of the angles in a pentagon inside out, or any number of other things. And when you try to build things out of other shapes, you can see this as well. The angles can bend and distort the original shape, even if nothing is wrong with the beams that make up the sides of these shapes. But triangles are rigid. For any set of 3 side lengths, there's only one shape it can have. Angles and sides shouldn't distort unless they snap completely. Well, that's another episode of Explain Like I'm 5 in the books. I really appreciate all of you who made it this far into the video. Of course, if you enjoyed this video, it would really help the channel out a lot if you gave the video a thumbs up, subscribe, or leave a comment down below. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.